Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 85 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer. Our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC alongside my guys Ian Schraier and Mike Zabo. I'm Joey Jarzynka. You probably noticed that there is no backdrop here behind me. I am in Trenton, New Jersey, covering some baseball here in the collegiate rankings in the state capitol. So we cannot thank you all enough for making us a part of your Friday evening. Ian Schraier, Mike Zabo, good to see you fellas. How are things over back home, actually?
I'm doing well. Apparently, I've costed the Mets a couple of wins this 1 or 2 wins this week.
Only one.
Going there
Only
and showing
one.
my face. So at least it was only one, I guess. So the Mets still got the series win, but apparently I did cause a bit of a problem Wednesday night.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I can tell you, I know Ian definitely was not too fond of that, right, Ian?
All he's telling me is how bad Chris Bassett is, but I mean, he at least he wasn't there to throw away Cookie Carrasco's gem that he threw yesterday. But life is good. I mean, you know, Islander fans are still living in 2014 now that the Rangers are in the playoffs. But other than that, life is good.
Yes, and you know, I have to tell you is one cup since 40 is definitely the way the way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a fantastic show on tap here. We are going to have a couple of guests here with us. Of course, Kyle Madsen, our good friend from San Francisco, covering the 49ers, managing editor of the Niners Wire, a part of UMG or USA Today SMG Group. And of course, we will be taking a peek at Major League Baseball, taking a peek at what former New York Met legend Marcus Stroman has done in his new home at Chicago on the north side. He has done bupkis up to this point here this season. And of course, some NFL talk as we will be welcoming in, of course, Kyle Madsen. And of course, we will be talking about some NCAA basketball with our good friend, with Jake Zimmer of College Hoops Digest. So guys, while we do wait for Kyle Madsen to arrive here, he is running a couple of minutes late. Let's get things started here with Major League Baseball, and let's look through some of the locals, of course. And down here in Philadelphia, we will not be starting here, but looking back at what the New York Mets have done, they lead the way with the first team to get 10 victories this season, Ian Schraier. And again, we don't want to say, World Series champions all the way in April, but, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, they are looking really good. It's funny. I was reading something before the show that it said the Mets, we haven't gotten to hockey yet. The Mets are winners of their first 4 series of the season, and the last time that they did that was 2018 when they had won their first 5 series. And for those Met fans that are wondering what season that was the great 12-2 start. Mets went to Washington in mid-April. Were ahead, I believe it was 6-1, and never recovered after they blew that lead, and I believe they lost 7-6 or 8-6 in that game. Never recovered. Had a horrific June. The great Mickey Callaway managing the Mets. So don't want to jinx them, obviously, but you can't, escape facts. But yeah, it's great to see that the Mets are 10-4, winners of their first 4 series. It was great to see Max Scherzer. I know when we were on the show last week, we spoke a lot about how Max really has not looked Max-like yet, and goes out and throws 6 no-hit innings against the Giants the other night. It's just a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to be a part of. They get started tonight with a series in Arizona starting at 9:40, first pitch from Chase Field. But this has just been a lot of fun to be a part of, at least so far.
Well, Mike, we can't say the same about our New York Yankees, who absolutely blanked the bed yesterday in that day game against Detroit, which of course will bring us into our first topic of the afternoon, or rather of the late evening here on the East Coast. We got a chance to see yesterday Detroit blank the Yankees 3-0, and now they start off a 3-game set against the Cleveland Guardians. Now, keep in mind, folks, I had to rehearse saying that about 3 to 4 times, so that was pretty good that we said that right on cue the first time. But in all seriousness, though, the Yankees, granted, they did take 2 out of 3 in Detroit, but looked putrid in game number 3, Mike.
Oh, that's just the story of the season so far for the Yankees. They're 7-6, but they really haven't looked amazing in any of the games. Yesterday, I just don't really know what is different from this Yankees team so far to last year's team. Now, granted, I'll give everybody, a first month pass especially some of the offense getting back into rhythm and whatnot. I give people a pass for the first month to a certain extent, but right now I really don't see what's the difference between last year's Yankee team and this year's Yankee team in terms of the offense. They're still struggling with runners in scoring position, striking out too much. The bottom of the order, 6 through 9 spots, are absolute black holes. It's really just. I mean, yesterday they couldn't hit out of a wet paper bag. It was god awful.
Yeah, it's an absolute disaster to see what's going on over there, and then you continue to hear that there's a potential that Garrett Cole might not be this guy, and this is what the New York media says and does. Just because of the sticky stuff is now illegal in Major League Baseball, that Garrett Cole might just be the biggest bust, like in terms of signings since Randy Johnson back in 2002. I mean, listen, I don't know if that's going to be the case with Garrett Cole, but all I can say is that he is having a seriously tough time without this sticky stuff, Ian. I mean, is there a way that you can see that Garrett Cole could potentially, rebound or find a way without this stuff that he's won a World Series ring with?
That's a great question, Joey. That really is. The problem is that I think everybody, even as Yankee fans, you're starting to have flashbacks to Garrett Cole's early days with the Pittsburgh Pirates, where he struggled often. But what's scary for the Yankees rotation is that the best pitcher in the rotation is Nestor Cortez, and he's your number 5.
Nasty Nestor. Yeah.
I look. There's been some promising appearances so far from Severino, coming off the fact that the guy has not pitched consistently in 2 years. Jordan Montgomery has kind of been status quo. Jameson Taillon has, I don't want to say failed, but I think he didn't come in expecting to be this starlight pitcher. So that's a big piece to this as well. Is they're really not getting consistent starting pitching. Going back to Mike's point about the hitting as well with regards to consistency, Gleyber Torres is hitting like 187. I mean, his numbers the first month of the season are not good.
And he's simply not even getting reps. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and also on top of that, Joey, is that and I kind of thought that they would find a way. It's still early, and I agree with Mike that do they deserve a first month pass? Yes, because they're good enough to be a playoff team. They're good enough to be contending for the division. What's the part where because they're struggling offensively that really gets highlighted a lot too is the fact that bottom third of the order doesn't produce. I mean, but you knew that when you traded Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez, albeit how inconsistent Gary's been with the bat, that guys like Kyle Higashioka, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, we're not going to give you. We're going to give you the same type of at bats that we've seen before, like Roned Odor last year, very complacent at the plate. You got him more for his defense, but also remember a guy like Falefa is still very, very young and still unproven. But yeah, to get back to your point, Joey, I'm sure a lot of people are having some Pittsburgh flashbacks to the days of Garrett Cole. He's kind of starting to prove to people, is he the same person without the sticky stuff? We'll see over the next couple of starts, I guess, but right now, not the start you want as a Yankee fan.
Well, this is what we can say. We are going to take a quick detour just because our good man, our guest has arrived in Kyle Madsen. But yes, that is definitely something that Yankees fans have to keep an eye out on heading, later on into in 10. There's a lot of eyes now. There are, especially out on this side of the coast. There was obviously some talk where potentially Steve Cohen might make a run at Aaron Judge. That's going to be another distraction as well. And now we're starting to see this, this underachieving Yankees team, which I can't believe I'm saying this, but as a fan, it's really tough to see what's going on. Despite taking these series wins, I guess, but when they lose really badly, and there's no, I don't want to say not coming back from it. It's just it's really tough, tough to see with all
Make
that.
Sure, Joey, you come back to that Judge point because I'll definitely touch on that.
Yeah, for sure. And and listen, I know that obviously Kyle has the San Francisco Giants that he can be happy with, but I mean, Kyle, I gotta ask you this though, just before we get into some San Francisco talk. The Oakland A's, they are, what's the word? I think the college baseball game I just worked at here in Trenton had more fans than the Coliseum last night. Could that be the case?
Yeah, it's a definite possibility. I went to a Las Vegas Aviators game last summer that was probably more well attended than at least one, maybe two of the A's games I went to last year. I'm an A's fan. And what ownership has done to this fan base is disgusting. And I know that it's easy to point at the fans when there's 2,500 people there, but the stadium sucks. Not even just the stadium. It's in a terrible location. Like there's nothing around it. It's awful to get to. The traffic, so it's 880 is the freeway it's on. And 880 is backed up always, all the time. And it's impossible to get to. They just raised ticket prices while trading Matt Chapman, Matt Olson. They gave a joke of an offer to Marcus Semien, an Oakland guy who wanted to be here, who people loved. Sean Manaea, who people loved. Both of them gone in the last 2 years. There's just no reason to trust ownership because the ownership group doesn't want to win. And their payroll is less than they're going to get from the TV deal. Like they're in the black just off TV money. And that's crazy. That shouldn't be like the ownership doesn't want to win. And that eventually bleeds down to where fans don't care either. And I think that's what you're seeing. It's not a lack of A's fans. It's just a lack of people who want to devote time, energy, and money into the product that this ownership group continually puts on the field.
Yeah. And you know what? Again, this is something that we've heard also. I saw this not too long ago, I believe on social media when, if your owner does not want to put in the money, why should we be putting in money to kind of watch or, whatever the case may be. And it's really unfortunate, but Kyle, welcome to the show. Now we will, introduce you the right way. Ladies and gentlemen, midday producer of 957 The Game, 95.7 The Game out in the Bay Area. And of course, our good friend from the Niners Wire, part of USA Today, SMG's group, managing editor of the Niners Wire. Kyle, we obviously we got a chance to speak just a few moments ago. Thank you for joining us here tonight. How are things on the West Coast on this Friday afternoon for you?
It's great. It's warm and it's Friday afternoon. So like A+. Can't wait.
You lucky SOB. That I can tell you, because even though it is warm out here today, it'll be about 45 tomorrow. But I mean, listen, I'm extremely grateful for you to be here today. Let's get things started with obviously the Niners. And we got a chance to see, of course, Debo Samuel request a trade. This is a big deal for San Francisco fans. And for you, your initial thought when you heard that Debo Samuel wanted out was what?
Yeah, it was what? Like that's crazy. The Niners, three things they had to do this offseason. The three major things was trade Jimmy Garoppolo. That's not going well. And then re-sign Nick Bosa and re-sign Debo Samuel. And the Garoppolo thing happens, like, okay, that's fine. Like they can manage that. Like it's not that big of a deal. It's not ideal, but it's not perfect. It's not catastrophe. And then it's like, oh, Debo wants out. It's like, what the hell happened? The good news is I think where they're at might be salvageable, but yeah, definitely a curveball in how I expected this offseason to go.
Yeah, it's when you see something like this and you say to yourself that, yeah, it's finally beginning to come together. You're going to, obviously have this. And again, I'm not going to call him the next Jerry Rice or anything along those lines, but you have someone that can now be your wide receiver one that now wants out. And now we're playing this, it's almost the ever-changing domino effect that we are just continuing to see throughout the NFL. Listen, Tyreek Hill was traded, Devontae Adams was traded, and now the next domino can fall in Debo Samuel. I don't even know how to go about this because of, what we're seeing here. Ian, would you like to chime in on this?
It's more a question I would have really for Kyle to try to elaborate on. You would say maybe a little bit that maybe Debo's trying to capitalize on the trade market. But what I was reading, Kyle, and thank you so much again for being with us. I wasn't sure whether to call you Kyle or Cliff when you came on the broadcast tonight.
That's it. He's going to log off now.
Sure. No, it's fine. Did you see how ill-prepared they looked for their playoff game? I mean, it just really, I felt really vindicated. Anyways, go ahead.
No, and so you should,
And we also, and keep in mind also, the moment that game went final, I tweeted at you. That was the best one of you right away.
I got 2 questions for you tonight, Kyle. The first one, obviously related to Debo, and I'll get to the other one later, is a lot of the talk with regards to the trade for Debo is that he doesn't like the way he's being utilized within Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I don't know if he has a legitimate gripe here, Kyle, and feel free to chime in at any point, because what we're seeing more and more is how much offenses have changed. Offenses tend to go more spread, utilizing wide receivers in a more versatile role. Obviously, we saw that it started with Debo, and now we're seeing it a lot more in Cincinnati with Jamar Chase. 27% of the 49ers offense last year ran through Debo Samuel. I mean, he had 1,700 all-purpose yards. Do you think that he has a legitimate gripe to say, I'm a wide receiver 1, you shouldn't be using me basically on a jet sweep or any type of running back role here?
He'd be the first NFL player in history to not want the ball. Like I get, so I don't, let me start here. I don't think it's about his role. I genuinely don't think that this chasm between him and the 49ers has anything to do with that, because as recently as the Pro Bowl, he was talking about how awesome this new role is and they've made a new position and this and that. I do understand though, if he wants X amount of dollars, but then wants an additional amount sprinkled on because the beating he's going to take as a running back, like that I would understand, because it wasn't just jet sweeps and throws behind the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. Like by the end of the year, they were just lining him up as a running back and running him into the line, like between the tackles. And that it works. Like he's an effective player like that, but that's an extra pounding on his body. He had 55 of his 59 carries came after the 8th game. So the final 9 games of the year, he had 55 carries and then 27 in 3 playoff games. So that's 82 in 12 games. Like that's a lot. Yeah. So I would understand if he did go to the Niners and was like, hey, I'm down with this role, but I need it scaled back significantly, or I'm going to require more money. I would definitely see that, but I cannot fathom a scenario where he went in and said, I want this contract. And the Niners said, great, you're going to be our wide back. And he went, no, like that just doesn't track with anything that any football player has ever wanted.
Now, do you think, Kyle, that at this point that the Niners are just going to call Debo's bluff, or is there a legitimate discussion to, obviously, I think the 2 teams that were reported today interested right off the bat were the New York Jets and the Green Bay Packers, but to a certain degree, I think experts believe that this is just a matter of the Niners calling Debo's bluff. Do you believe that? Yeah,
I do, because they don't have to do anything. He's under contract for next year, and then they can franchise tag him. And if he doesn't play in 2022, like he doesn't accrue a season. So now the franchise tag's not going to be as much as it would have been if he did play. Like he stands to lose out on a lot of money if he decides to just never show up. And the 49ers know that. So I think any trade that is going to involve Debo Samuel is going to be a trade that they would have done even without a trade request, if that makes sense. Like if the Packers are going to say, or the Giants are, I jokingly, when the Giants said they were going to, or the report came out that they're trying to trade Kadarius Toney, which is nuts, but that's a different thing. I was like, Kadarius Toney, number 5, number 35, I think, and then their 2023 first for Debo and the Niners 3rd round pick. It's like, that's the kind of deal I'm talking about. Like, and the Niners would do that regardless. Like there's like, I don't know, 10 players in the league who aren't available for 2 first round picks. Like that's a lot to give up for a player. So I think it would take that kind of haul. And I just don't think that a team is going to A, give up that draft capital, and then B, pay the guy 25, 26, 27 million a year, whatever he wants. Like that's a lot for a team to give up. So I don't think they're going to move him. Like they're not eager to. They're not just going to go, okay, fine, we'll give him away for a second. That's not happening. And I don't know if they're going to get an offer that compels them to move on.
I'm going to move the discussion. One last question, Kyle, here off of Debo Samuel for 1 second, because I want you to prepare me for the train wreck that's going to occur in Miami with Mike McDaniel as their head coach.
Oh, dude, Mike McDaniel's great, bro. I'm all in on Mike McDaniel.
Are you really?
No, I do. I think he's yes. I think he is exceptionally smart. There's a reason that Kyle Shanahan promoted him last year to avoid him leaving in that hiring cycle. Not that Kyle Shanahan can't live without Mike McDaniel, but I think a lot of what the 49ers did offensively came from Mike McDaniel's brain. And now you add Raheem Mostert into that offense, a guy who had a ton of success with the 49ers when he was healthy. Tyreek Hill in that offense would be nuts. And then you have Jalen Waddle and then Mike Gesicki. Like there's a lot of weapons for Mike McDaniel to work with. I don't know what kind of head coach he's going to be, just because that you don't know until you have a guy calling plays and is he going to call plays? Do we know? I know they hired an OC.
The only part that worries me, I guess, Kyle, is just, and I'm sorry to drop in there for a second, is that I feel like we see so many instances where, for example, like Kyle Shanahan was brought to San Francisco just to be an offensive guru, an offensive mind. You don't think it's a situation where, and I'm not trying to take any credit away from Mike McDaniel here, but it's not a situation where maybe Mike McDaniel succeeded because Kyle Shanahan's the head coach of that team.
That's a definite possibility, but I also think that Mike McDaniel is pretty brilliant in his own right. So I think the Dolphins are going to score a lot of points, and I think that Mike McDaniel just got done working with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's extremely limited. I think Tua is decidedly more talented than Jimmy, and I think that whatever limitations he might have as a quarterback, Mike McDaniel is going to be able to work around that. So, like I said, we'll have to see what he does with clock management and player management. But as far as putting together a successful offense, I think he's going to be able to do that pretty quickly.
To go back to your point, yes, Frank Smith, the former run game coordinator and the offensive line coach for the LA Chargers, is the new OC for the Dolphins.
Okay. So if McDaniel doesn't have to call plays, like, because he's never done that, if he doesn't have to call plays, like I like it even more. If he just has to game plan and then go worry about, managing game day, that's I liked the hire for the Dolphins a lot.
Well, I do agree, and I know Ian and a few other folks were not too fond of that hiring, but we will see. To continue,
I wouldn't have fired Brian Flores, but that's a different thing. that's already had a good coach.
Yeah, show.
The thing to me though is, and I want to get to Mike, of course, too, is exactly what you said, Kyle, is that to be still under control and to demand this trade, seeing what happened with Devontae Adams, seeing what happened with Tyreek Hill, not getting the money that they wanted. They now have it. Do you see a possibility where the Jets would come calling and say, hey, I have the number 10 pick. Do you want it? Plus more, obviously. The Jets tried doing that with Seattle, reportedly, and they basically left and turned and hung up the phone. Could that happen with John Lynch and Joe Douglas?
Yeah, it would depend on, for sure. The Jets are one of the teams that, so when the Debo stuff first came out, like just initial gut reaction, you just go look at the draft. Okay, there's 8 teams that don't have first round picks this year, so they're like, rule them out. The Niners aren't gonna not recoup a first round pick in this year's draft if they're moving them. I think. And then you have a bunch of teams with 2, and it's like, okay, they could either part with both or give up one of those. And I think the Jets would make a lot of sense, especially with the 10 pick. That would be hard for San Francisco to turn up if it's a 10 and a 2 and then a future 1. Like that's a really, really nice haul for any player, much less one that's disgruntled and wants out. But is he going to be able to go to the Jets and just turn the Jets around? Like, I don't know. Like that's where I would fear for Debo in that situation. Because I don't I don't have a lot of faith that the Jets are going the right direction.
Yeah,
but that's a different conversation.
I was gonna say, who does? All Jets fans out there. I can tell you, our good friend who I was just working with, Brian Morales. He's probably watching here, and he's a disgruntled Jets fan. I love you, B, but the Jets are absolutely terrible. Mike Szabo, finish us off here.
So the other question I would have too, Kyle, is we've seen really a lot of activity in the wide receiver market with the trades and the contracts that have been going around. I always think of the one that the Jaguars gave Christian Kirk. Is that sort of resetting the wide receiver market a bit? Is that also entering Debo Samuel's mind a bit going into these contract negotiations and why he's so disgruntled?
I think it has to. Like, if he was going to set, like, I don't know, obviously, but here's how that would happen. If he goes in and says, yeah, my floor is 20, I'll take 20 a year. And then all of a sudden you see Christian freaking Kirk get $18 million. Like, no shade at Christian Kirk. I think Christian Kirk can be a valuable receiver for a team, but 18 million is a lot of money. And so if you're Debo,
it's the Cliff Kingsbury effect. Come on now,
it's the
Kyle.
bump. Yeah, the Cliff bump for sure. The Jags are betting getting him out of Arizona and out from under Cliff is going to take him to a new level. Yeah, so now if your floor was 20 and you see Kirk getting 18, all of a sudden you're like, okay, now my floor is 23. That's how I think that this is impacting the market. So, yeah, I absolutely think that's playing at least a little bit of a role in not only Debo Samuel, but DK Metcalf's going to be up for an extension. AJ Brown's up for an extension. They all share an agent, actually. So I definitely think that has something to do with it, because now all of a sudden these teams are scrambling because these receivers are wanting more money based on what the Jags give to Christian Kirk.
It's a scary thought considering, I mean, he's been the number 2 receiver behind D-Hop for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making $18 million a year.
Yeah, and he's a nice little player. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the idea of having him on a team, but man,
18 mil. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
If the situation reaches this point, and if you had to pick, who would probably be the most likeliest team that Debo would go to?
Yeah, I think the Jets are one, because he has the 49ers connections there with Mike LaFleur, their OC, Robert Saleh, the head coach, of course, the former 49ers defensive coordinator. It would definitely make sense for the Jets. They have the number 10 pick. A team like the Colts that just has a ton of cap space. The Colts are weird though, because they've had all this cap space and never really used it for anything. But if you're ever going to use it, like, now's the time to do it. We saw the Niners work with the Colts on the DeForest Buckner trade a couple years back, so that connection is already there. If I was betting, I think the Colts are the betting favorite, but I think I would bet on the Jets, just because if they decide they're going all in, like, Debo is the player that's going to get Zach Wilson to take that second-year leap, and he is going to help us compete in the AFC East. If that's what they think, then I mean, they can give up the 4 and the 10 and something else, and the Niners are taking it.
Oh,
I know that's crazy, but that's.
I mean, the problem with the Jets has always remained the same, Kyle. It's that they're willing to go all in for a highlight reel player, and that's what Debo is. At the expense of not improving in areas, especially in foundational type players where they need defensive ends and they still need offensive line help.
Right.
And granted, they might draft it, but if you don't have the 4 and 10 pick, exactly who? I mean, because they've been so high now for weeks, at least. So what we've been told on Kayvon Thibodeau, like, clearly that goes out the window now, because you want to get your jersey selling wide receiver in green and white, and all the more power to them for wanting to do so. But that's been the problem with the Jets for a long time now.
Yeah, and I think that's why the trade, I don't see it going down, because when I say 4 and 10, I don't say that's what I would give up, but I think that's the kind of deal it's going to take to pry him away from the 49ers. I just don't know if there's any team that's going to want to do that. It just that he had injury problems in college. He had injury problems in 2020. He played through a couple injuries in 2021. And now if he really does not want to do the running stuff anymore, well, that diminishes a little bit of his value for a team that's acquiring him. So there's a lot of roadblocks, and it's going to take, like I said, a really monster offer that is kind of like, whoa, they gave up that much. That's crazy.
And not only that, too, also, you look and you say to yourself, too, that, how much leash does Joe Douglas have, especially ever since Woody Johnson came back into the fold? You saw a few things that were, and I don't want to say, was the reason why the Jets, I guess, took a couple of flyers on a few players, but I guess with Woody there ever since coming back from being the ambassador overseas, things have gotten a little more Jet-like recently. That's kind of the way it feels. Does that sound fair? Where it's, I just don't see a 4-10 becoming I just don't see the Jets doing that. And that's another reason why
I don't either.
Also, San Francisco might just hold on to Debo there. Exactly what you said, Kyle.
Yeah, it would just, I know it's like, oh, Jets gonna Jets, but that I don't think they think they're a receiver away. No. And I would hope that that franchise isn't so convinced that Debo is like going to get them over the top. And I don't think they are.
Yeah. So
I hope not.
So the next thing also is that, we want to take a peek now at where the Niners are going to be standing in the NFL draft for this upcoming season. You look and you say to yourself, obviously, San Francisco, they made it to the NFC Championship. They have a lot, they have what it takes to get back there, Kyle. Lower draft pick, of course. Where is the need if they stand pat and there's no trades, there's nothing? Debo is still on the team. Where do they go?
So this is a really fun question because they don't have it's not like, oh, they need a cornerback and then they need a safety and then a line. Like they have, it's wide open. Like they just need to go best player, whoever, wherever. They need depth at a whole bunch of positions. They could use better starters at a whole bunch of positions. But the one that really stands out, they lost Pro Bowl left guard Laken Tomlinson in free agency to the Jets. So they lose Laken Tomlinson. They brought back Daniel Brunskill as their starting right guard, who is not a very good player. So they ostensibly have 2 open offensive guard spots, and they've used some draft picks over the last couple of years, and maybe one of those guys steps in and has a good camp. But I think they're going to want to possibly get a player that they think could start right away. Alex Mack, their center, is still weighing whether he's going to play a 14th season. So they might need a starting center if he retires. And if he retires, all of a sudden, to me, it's like you got to go center with that pick or trade up to get a center that you like.
I would love Tyler Linderbaum, man. That would be such a bang pick for the Niners at that area of the draft.
Yeah, I imagine that they'd have to get up early second round to do that. And maybe they like him that much that they'd be willing to do it. But Linderbaum, Cam Jurgens from Nebraska is another player I think would fit really nicely with them. But if Mac retires, it's center. If he doesn't, then it's those 2 guard spots. And then the one that I always say, safety too. They could definitely use a safety. But the one that I always point out is tight end. They have George Kittle for sure, but after that, it's just like legit created players, like your standard 65 to 68 type of player on Madden. Just they're just there, and they've just been there. And the Niners have been trying to find this second pass catching tight end. And Jordan Matthews, former Eagles receiver, has converted to tight end, played there last year on their practice squad. Maybe he has learned the position well enough to take over, but I think the Niners could use a tight end. And if a player like Trey McBride from Colorado State falls that far, I don't think he will, but I really like him as a player. And if he falls to 61, I think the 49ers jump on it because he would fit their offense really well.
And just looking also, correct me if I'm wrong here, San Francisco, they don't have a first round draft pick.
Yeah, they traded him for Trey Lance.
Yeah.
They traded 2022 and 23 for Trey Lance.
Wow. Yeah, so so they only have their pick number 61. Wow.
Yeah, 61, 93, and 105 are their day 2 picks. So, yeah, that's another factor in the whole Debo thing. Is is there a player that they think, is there a receiver specifically that they think, is it Treylon Burks, is it Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave? Is there a player that they think isn't going to be Debo because frankly, just nobody is. He's just such a unique player. But can they get a playmaker who can they get a player who can still be a playmaker in different ways? And if they think that player is in the first round, then maybe the price on Debo becomes a little cheaper. But yeah, I have not paid as close of attention to the draft as this year. I have not paid as close attention to the draft this year as I typically do.
Yeah.
Just because when they don't have a first round pick, it's like who there any number of players could fall to 61. So
yeah,
just kind of keeping it general.
That's very true. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Madsen. Listen, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. Or, this afternoon where you are, where you're located. Midday producer of 95.7 The Game out in the Bay. Managing editor of USA Today SMG Groups, The Niner Wire, our good friend, Kyle Madsen. Kyle, thank you so much for coming on here, and we will see you soon, and enjoy the warmth out in the Bay Area.
I sure will, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bud. All right, we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Well, it's always a good time, of course, to bring on another good friend of ours because listen, so much has gone on in the college basketball world in the last 24 to 48 hours, where bombshells have been dropped, and it's crazy. I mean, who would have thought that Jay Wright would retire Jake Zimmer? Who would have thought that? Did you have
certainly not me. I had no clue. I thought it was BS when Shams actually tweeted it. And then, Jaden Daly texts us. We've got this little group chat of myself and Josh Adams and Dan Gardella and John Fanta and some others. And Daly puts this tweet in there from Shams. It says, Jay Wright's considering retiring. I said, wow, that's a shocker. Do you think he will? And then all of a sudden, maybe 30 seconds later, Fanta gets the scoop. He says, I'm told Jay Wright's retiring. Wild night on Wednesday, fellas. Can't wait to talk about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Zimmer, part of the College Hoops Digest family, and of course, a good friend of our brand. Jake, thank you so much for coming on here, sir. How are things up north where you are?
Everything's good. Running around like crazy as everybody does in this business. Just got back from some PC softball. I've been working on MLS Next Pro too. I can't say enough good things about MLS Next Pro. The product that they've delivered, this is where I call 100% of my games with the MLS Next Pro too. So this remote broadcasting thing is certainly a different animal. A lot of kinks to work out for sure, but it's been a hell of a ride, and I can't wait to start working with them a bit more.
Oh, that's really awesome to hear. And, obviously not too far from where I am over there is Wagner Baseball over there in the state capital of New Jersey, down in Trenton. But I'm glad that you're able to get some games in and call some games from your living room as well. So that's pretty cool stuff. Let's get things going here. And of course, with Jay Wright becoming the next domino to fall, not only in the Big East, but, in college basketball in general, you lose Roy Williams about, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And then you have Hubert Davis. He comes in. And then you lose Coach K, where, the retirement tour happens. And then all of a sudden there's this bombshell that comes in. 3 high-class coaches in college basketball. This is a new era heading into 2022-23. And well, I want to start off close here in the Big East because that's obviously where we follow. But this is, I think, going to be a massive loss for the Big East, not only for college basketball. Jake, what do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. The Big East is never going to be the same, right? My piece the other night for College Hoops Digest was very much diving into those topics. It's like, as a guy that grew up rooting for UConn and an employee and covering Providence, and doing the rounds with Seton Hall, with Butler, with Creighton, things like that in person, St. John's, all of those. This is monumental because this is a guy that terrorized your programs for the last 21 years. And now he's just gone, right? So the initial reaction is thank God. But how is that sport going to change without one of the most clinical, motivating, and humble men at the helm of a program? You know, Jay Wright's a pure winner. You cut it any way you want to. The man knows how to win. He has never had a season at Villanova in single-digit wins, guys. Can you believe that? He had some pretty tough years.
Yes.
I actually can, yeah.
Yeah. None of them were bad enough where it was a 9-win or 8-win season, even in the early days in the early 2000s. How miraculous. You know, it puts a lot into perspective about Jay Wright and what he's done for this game.
I mean, think about it for a second here, Jake. Has there ever been a moment in Jay Wright's career, and I guess this is more of a rhetorical question, where he has not produced a factory of point guards that have gone to the NBA draft and been drafted into the NBA?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you look at even the most recent years. When they won in 2018, you had a guy like Jalen Brunson who everybody, kind of wrote off. And they're like, wow, this guy actually might have a future in the NBA, right? But, I mean, the Villanova NBA alumni list is ever growing. Even Sadiq Bey a couple of years ago, people said, well, he's no superstar. He's carving it up in Detroit. Good for him. It speaks to how, the culture of winning, and it's so different than what the other guys have done, right? Coach K, he was a guy that was set in his ways. Your number is only retired if you graduate from Duke, if you have a diploma. And he embraces this one and done stuff. Jay Wright, on the other hand, it's very, very different. Look at the guys that have stayed. Colin Gillespie's like 30, and he's still, he came back for a 6th or 7th year of Villanova. I mean, come on. These guys want to play for him, and then they go have long-lasting NBA careers. You even look at a guy like Ryan Arcidiacono that's not going to be a Hall of Famer in the NBA, but he's going to contribute, and he waited his time at Villanova. Now he's contributing at the NBA level, which the list goes on and on and on. Jay Wright.
Dante DiVincenzo as well, Jake. Dante DiVincenzo is doing pretty well in Milwaukee.
Yeah. He's got a ring, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's got an NBA championship ring last year.
And if I'm not mistaken, DiVincenzo, I believe, wasn't he a part of that trade to Sacramento? Was he sent off to Sacramento?
No, he's still
Is he still there?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna have to check that out here because he was sent. He's over in Sacramento now. He was a part of the trade that sent Serge Ibaka to the Bucks.
Really?
Yes, really.
Yep. For Serge Ibaka.
Do we have to fact check the fact checker though?
February 10th, 2022, as according to NBA.com. Yeah, right. That's what we've got. Yeah. So, and someone else too, another player too, Mikhail Bridges as well. He's another player that spent all the years there too, if I'm not mistaken. And
you've got, look at the alumni that are currently in the NBA now, Joe. You've got Arcidiacono, you've got Sadiq Bey with Detroit. Mikhail Bridges, Jalen Brunson, DiVincenzo. You've got Kyle Lowry, who's still there. People forget that. Josh Hart really contributing. Eric Paschal, who why can't Fordham get guys like that? And Jeremiah Robinson Earl, right? The list that's active right now. You go down the list. I mean, geez, to pick a couple out. Man, Ed Pinckney back in the day. Rory Sparrow played for 7 franchises. Amari Spellman, Tim Thomas. This list is so long, and it all goes back to obviously Jay Wright's predecessor and Raleigh Massimino. But the foundation was there for him to succeed. He lived up to it, and that's the bottom line. And I think I'm sure we'll talk about reasons for retirement and things like that too, but the man's seen a lot. 21 years, 2 national championships. The recruits list goes on and on. He's been through a lot, and I think he was just ready. Wanted to hang it up.
Mike Szabo, take it away.
Yeah, I guess chalk this up to another one of my bad luck charms, I guess, going to Citi Field this week. This happens right as I'm walking into the gates. I get this news. Yeah. So of course, again, me going to a Mets game, again, in some cosmic universe, I guess, that caused all these dominoes to fall. I was pretty shocked by this. I honestly thought I'd probably, like in 10, 15 years' time, get married and have kids, and Jay Wright would still be at Villanova. So
I was having fantasies about Jared Grosso knocking off Jay Wright. You know, Jared Grosso was a kid when Jay Wright was coaching at Hofstra, and that was
Jake,
like,
you got him going to the wrong school, buddy. You got him going to the wrong school.
Part of me was like, oh my God, you know, does Bryant beat Villanova in, like, you know, one of the next couple of years?
see, Joey, what Jake forgets is I have Grosso going to St. John's in 2 years. He forgets.
Thanks, guys. Take care. I'm out. Drop the mic.
Man.
That's it. All right. If Jared Grosso goes to St. John's, maybe I'll move to Queens.
Ooh, that's enticing.
We'll have to hold you to that one.
That's enticing.
You can hold me to maybe I'll move to Queens, and then you know, it was just a maybe.
Oh man, Mike, go ahead, finish your sentence.
But yeah, I mean, Jay Wright, I mean, there's not too much more you can say about him. The resume speaks for himself. I mean, he's just a class act all around. Yeah, it's interesting now where Villanova is going to go. It's similar to almost the Seton Hall situation in terms of how they're going about their succession. Hire a former assistant who went out and, you know, on to be the head coach of his own program, Kyle Neptune, as opposed to Shanine Holloway, who had 4 years in St. Peter's. Kyle Neptune, with one very good year in Fordham, will now take over Villanova. So interesting. It's always interesting when a legendary coach like that will retire, how in the short term that will affect recruiting or whatnot. Will there be any drop off? I don't think there will, but that's always still a conversation. The thing that really is still goes under the radar, it's not like Jay Wright's going off to Florida or something. He's going to be a special advisor to the university's president, so he's still going to be there.
It makes me wonder sometimes, though, because, you know, you think about this with Seton Hall as well. And Shaheen Holloway has his own, you know, his own recruiting tools and everything along those lines. But keep in mind, though, he did recruit some high-quality players in his time under Kevin Willard. Now it's probably going to be the same thing with Kyle Neptune, or is it different at all? Jake, what do you think in terms of Kyle Neptune's hire, pulling him from Fordham and bringing him home to Villanova?
Yeah, loaded question there. I'll try to sort of break it down, right? First of all, I would like to lead with, I am devastated for the folks at Fordham.
Yeah.
Devastated. They had their guy. Well, they fired Neubauer in January, guys. I wrote something, you know, basically evaluating what would be next for this program. And there was one guy at the top of my list. It was Kyle Neptune. I said, I'll even read you the quote that I said. I said, in a program that so desperately needs leadership, a recruiting expert, and a developmental guru, Kyle Neptune is the answer. And he was. He took actionable steps at Fordham to improve that program. And I think, you know, drastically. Again, it was a Fordham program that was rock bottom. You couldn't really get much worse, but I think they took some steps and they beat some good teams, I thought, in the A-10 this year. That being said, I think he proved a point to a lot of people that he could have his own program and be successful. And with the financial resources and the national exposure of Villanova, you know, I think he's the answer there too. I'd have to think over more about how this could affect recruiting potentially, right? You know, if he, for example, takes a couple of guys at Fordham that he thinks could, you know, shine on the Big East stage against teams like Creighton and Xavier and Providence and St. John's, or if he's really going to have to start over and sort of, re-recruit these guys that Jay Wright brought in. Going to be a really interesting dynamic to see sort of what happens next with Neptune.
Well, and that too, because again, just like what we brought up with, with Villanova, not only the reasons for retirement as well. Well, actually, you know what? I'll ask you that first. What do you believe the reason for this retirement was? Because we continuously saw, or even heard possibilities of, the ever-changing layout of college basketball is getting more strenuous for some of these older coaches. It's getting more strenuous for just coaches in general. It's a much more demanding occupation for these guys. What do you think was the reason for retirement for Jay Wright?
I think there were a lot, for sure. I think he's 60. He's not exactly a spring chicken, but he's not, he's not this old guy that Coach K is either, right? Let's not delude ourselves. I mean, Coach K is he's getting up there. He was probably burnt out. Dana O'Neill from The Athletic got the scoop here, reported that there were basically 4 people that knew Jay Wright was going to retire at the beginning of March. It was Jay Wright, his wife, Mark Jackson, the AD at Villanova, and his wife. And he picked up the phone. It's a great piece, by the way. Go, for those Athletic subscribers, I definitely encourage you to go take a look. Right before they're about to go to the Big East tournament, Jay Wright gets on the phone and he calls Mark Jackson the night before at Villanova and says, "Mark, I'm done. I'm done after this year." And Mark says, "You've done this before. You've called me a couple years before. Just I respect your decision, but just think about it, basically. You don't have to, do the tournament, take a couple of weeks, and then we can sit down and seriously talk about it if you want to." And he said, Jay said back to Mark Jackson, he basically said, "Mark, no, I'm serious this time. I'm done." And then Mark Jackson wake up and he says, "Wow, oh my God, was that some sort of nightmare I had? There's no way that, Jay Wright, the guy that, has taken this program to new heights and has won us 2 national championships is just going to hang it up like that." The next morning, Jay Wright walked into his office and he said, "Nope, I'm even more sure after our conversation how I'm done." First of all, how that remained a secret for all these weeks, I'm shocked. I am absolutely shocked that he didn't spill to anybody. Not as players, not as coaches, crazy stuff. Obviously, he probably had to call Kyle Neptune up at some point to say, "Hey, you in," basically. But, so I think there's that piece of just, he's tired, he's run down, he's sort of maxed out. I get it, right? You won 2 national titles. What else do you need to prove to people? But look at how much the game has changed as the other lens too, right? This is the era, and I'm sure you guys have talked about on the show before, name, image, and likeness is something brand new to these old guys, right? It's beforehand, and I'm not in any way surmising that Jay Wright was involved in any sketchy stuff, with recruiting and things like that. But let's get real. There are guys that got dinged and very badly at a large scale for compensating athletes before it was allowed, right? Before you taking them, whether it's Patino, where you go and take everybody out for strippers and stuff like that, or if, you're one of the Southern programs that, maybe they realistically don't come from really great families. Maybe their financial situation's great. The checkbook comes out from somebody and all of a sudden they're taken care of. They signed at LSU, they signed at Alabama, something like that. Not to say, argue necessarily that one's better than the other, right? Or that one's more exposed than the other, but this is just like the process and things like that of name, image, and likeness at a Division 1 and 2 and 3 level. It's been something that these coaches have never seen before, right? The game's changing so much. The rules, the 3-point lines over the years, right? The shot clocks. And, it gets a lot is what we've heard from these older coaches, right? So I think there's a lot of factors, but let's not delude ourselves. Jay's age is one, and I think the other is just a changing of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at, and again, I don't want to go off onto a complete tangent, but again, you look at somebody that a lot of people have said, well, it's a questionable hire in Thad Matta. He's an older guy. He's been through a lot. His health is, questionable here and there. And he's an older gentleman. Keep in mind, I believe, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, lower 50s, I believe Thad Matta is. I think he's
Thad Matta's going to be 55 this upcoming season.
Right. So, again, this is a brand new head coach out in Butler, or at Butler rather, that's going to be taking on, a completely different, complete opposite of what Kyle Neptune is going to be inheriting. My last question to you before I get over to Ian and to Mike again, Jake, when you look at the entire landscape of the Big East, now that you have a plethora of different coaches, Sean Miller, the aforementioned Thad Matta, Shaheen Holloway, now Kyle Neptune joining in the party. Do you think that now, obviously Villanova will still be the hunted, but do you think that somebody else could potentially take the top, maybe like a UConn or even a Xavier?
As far as from a team perspective, you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I think Creighton's right up there again.
Yeah.
You see what they did this past year. They turned a lot of heads. They surprised some people. I was a Creighton doubter. I'll admit it. I think Creighton's always going to be, in what history has told us as far as the Big East goes, they're always going to be in the mix. They have injuries. They're still in the mix. Last year we saw Greg McDermott, make the comments that he did. I'm of the belief that those, aren't really forgivable. But he apologized to his guy, said, I know you won't forgive me, but we're going to win basketball games. And they turned some heads and won a couple tournament games. Creighton's a team that is going to have a target on its back, plain and simple. They might get written off at the beginning of the year by pollsters. I think that's a little foolish. I think you've got to be putting them top 2-3 for the next couple of years, provided their roster stays the same. See a team like UConn, depending on the talent they bring in, maybe I'm not saying by any means I'm giving up on Dan Hurley, but, the past couple of postseasons have been a bit disappointing for UConn. I don't think it's to the standard that UConn fans expected with Dan Hurley, but he'll get there. He's got time. It's only been a couple of years in the Big East, right? So they'll figure it out. I look to a team like Providence, too. If they're going to keep doing what they're doing in the transfer portal, go out every year and not really recruit freshmen and just recruit guys that, need a change of pace, that were contributors in Power 5 conferences, you better watch out for them, because they've proven that they can lock that chemistry thing down no matter who they bring in. So I'm looking at probably Creighton, UConn, and Providence are big challengers to Villanova's sort of, you can call it elite status in the Big East.
That's definitely something to look forward to next year. And of course, we will be doing many instant reaction, stuff with you guys up with the College Hoops Digest, and continuing to partner on plenty of stuff, collaborate on a whole bunch of stuff. Ian Schraier, take it away.
We're not going to call that Providence ad in there any PC bias now, Jake, right?
No. Hey, listen, I know I get checks cut by Father Sicard, right? But it's but those are for my services. I promise. Those are for my broadcast services. They're not to say stuff like this, because I'd have to invoice him quite a bit more. So
I will tell you though, Jake, I am in 100% agreement with you with regards to Dan Hurley and what's happening over there at UConn, and we could definitely chomp more on that as we get closer to the 22-23 college basketball season, because I'm definitely going to want more of your input on UConn. But to speak a little bit again on with respect to Jay Wright, I mean, I don't think I've ever met a more respectable coach, and someone who has always taken the time out of his day to say hello, shake somebody's hand, and has never forgot his early roots. He may have 2 national championships, multiple Final Four appearances, and just the title now of, since retirement at least, of probably the best head coach in the Big East. But that was one thing I always respected about Jay Wright. I had a chance to meet Jay Wright back in 2016, and just gave me the time of day for about even 20 minutes. And just such an outstanding man to meet. But I'm curious, Jake, if you could see something along the lines of now that Jay is stepping away from coaching, if you could see him going the TV route and kind of joining Raftery and Gus kind of as that Reggie Miller third body at the table come next basketball season.
You know, I've had this sick fantasy that Fanta gets a studio job and his number 2 guy is Jay Wright, or his number 1 analyst, I should say, you know, his right-hand man. I think that should happen, first of all. The good folks at Fox better be listening to this, because who wouldn't want to watch John Fanta and Jay Wright? That's awesome.
I agree.
Yeah, to your comment, Ian, about, you know, just his who Jay Wright is, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Jay Wright, and I say pleasure too, because it really was back in 2020. They just smacked Providence in the behind at the dunk, you know, in 2020. Fanta takes me back in the tunnel. He says, "Hey, I need you to interview, you know, hold the camera while I interview Jay Wright." I said, "Yeah, sure." Jay comes up to me, shakes my hand. We're in the same fraternity. He graduated much before I did, of course. He was at Bucknell. You know, we have a special handshake we do. He shook my hand, gave me the time of day, asked where I'm from, what I'm doing. I said, "Oh, yeah, you know." I go to Bryant. He goes, "Tell Jared Grasso I said hello. He's a great guy." Naturally, you know, when Jay made the announcement a couple days ago, I texted Jared. I said, "You know, I forgot to tell you, he name dropped you when I met him." And Jared texted me back. He goes, and I'll go on record with this because I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but he said he's a genuinely great guy, treated me very well for my whole career as a player and as a coach too. So just a quick comment on, you know, who Jay Wright is. That's like all the testimonials are the exact same.
Yep.
He's got the personality for TV, which I think would work really well. You know, he's a super charismatic guy, doesn't really offend many people, which, you know, I think doesn't necessarily fit the mold of a guy like Charles Barkley, which, thank God, I don't think we need more of those. But, you know, I think that could work really well at the analyst level. You know, he could be somebody like, you know, I'm trying to think. Raph, for sure. I think not to the level of, like, you know, the emotion of Raph and Dick Vitale and guys like that, but a guy that's an expert at breaking down the game and knows what it takes to win, I think is must-watch TV.
And I think what's also interesting, you spoke about Fox, is the fact that now Steve Lavin is in a head coaching role at San Diego. So you wonder if maybe that slides him into that perfect spot.
It could, and I've always said, you know, I've kind of suggested to Fanta, I said, well, you know, I know there's some Fox movement going on. Kevin Burkhart's going to football. Does that open up some stuff for you? He's like, no. So I've tried to do my duty to plant the seed here, but the roots of Fox go far beyond peasants like I.
Well, listen, never call yourself a peasant. You never know if you'll get that call or not. And it's very possible that Fanta might just get that call as well. Let's say, I got to tell you, Jake, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here for a little bit, despite some of the technical difficulties that you did experience a couple of minutes ago. We really appreciate you coming aboard and continuing to make our little friendship between the College Hoops Digest family and the Eastern Observer family continue to make it strong day in and day out. Thank you, brother.
Hey, of course. We'll have to schedule some time to talk Don Copeland too at Wagner, because they did real well with that. But always a pleasure. We're gonna have lots of these conversations, I'm sure. And thanks for having me on, guys.
Jake, thank you so much, brother. We'll see you soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, man.
Thanks,
all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we continue on here just the three of us. Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, I'm Joey Jarzynka. Cannot thank you all enough for making us a part of your Friday evening. Of course, we've gone all over the map here. We've gone from baseball to football to college basketball, and now we're going to throw it back to baseball. Something that we typically are not too fond of doing, but today is a little bit of a fun time. We're in a hotel. Ian's home, Mike's home. This is also a special 7:30 start, so let's just be unorganized, for the heck of it. Let's get back to baseball here, because there's a couple of things that we did want to speak about. Obviously, when we did bring up about the Yankees at the top of the show, Mike, we brought up about how Aaron Boone walked Miguel Cabrera yesterday on hit count number 2,999, and a lot of Yankees fans had some problems with that, saying that, I think maybe they were expressing their frustrations with Aaron Boone anyway, and they were saying that that was kind of unsportsmanlike against this legend. But I don't know if you want to call Miguel Cabrera a legend in baseball terms, granted of him being, one hit shy of 3,000. There's only a handful of folks that have done that. But granted, is this a move that you would have made if you were Aaron Boone as well?
Yeah, I don't know why this is such a big conversation. I mean, come on, enough with the nostalgia. He's trying to win a game. I don't really love the whole intentionally walking. I don't care who it is. I don't like the whole, oh, let's put a base open or whatnot. You're just inviting yourself and the next batter and giving them motivation to put in more of to bring in the run. So if it's Miguel Cabrera or it's the dude who got called up from AAA, I don't care who it is. I really don't like the idea of intentionally walking in baseball. But if you had that as a winning strategy, sure, I guess you could put together a compelling argument, a better matchups and all that sort of stuff. Because Austin Meadows was up next, and you like the lefty on lefty matchup a lot better. The Yankees had gone through a lot of pitchers already by that time, so you're just trying to win games. If you're in the Yankees perspective, I really don't care about nostalgia. And certainly whether I'm Lucas Luetge or I'm the Yankees, I wouldn't want to be the ones who are dinged on the record of Miguel Cabrera getting 3,000. I don't want to be the ones who get hit, give Miguel Cabrera his 3,000th hit. So if I'm the Yankees, I don't need to do the guy a favor. He had 3 other at-bats in the game where he could have gotten the hit. He didn't. So I don't feel bad if I'm in Aaron Boone's shoes. Sorry.
Well, you know what? It's very funny because you remember many, many years ago when David Price, when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays, he pitched that little floating ball to Derek Jeter, and his 3,000th hit was a home run into the 100 section all the way out in left field, and that's definitely a pitch that he wanted back for sure. It simply is not an ideal situation there because again, when you have somebody like that and have that in the back of your head, not only as a Yankees fan, but also just a baseball fan in general. And I think a lot of folks remember that day back in 2011 when Derek Jeter had his 3,000th hit against David Price. And, I don't remember exactly what it was that day that he had, if he was 1 for 3 or 0 for 4, whatever it was. But you're not going to intentionally walk that man. But then again, exactly what you said. Do you want to be that person to give up that 3,000th hit? I don't know if I would. Ian Schraier, take it away.
I agree with Zabo 100%. I would have intentionally walked him. He's trying to win a game. I understand it. There's no, I don't even want to call it grieving or ill will, if you want to call it that, to say, Derek Jeter got his 3,000th hit because he was a Yankee, so we're not going to do the same for Miggy Cabrera. I mean, Miggy Cabrera, and I read this today and I commented on it as well on Twitter about, is there a more generational hitter of the last 20 years than Miguel Cabrera? And the only other argument you can make is for Albert Pujols. At this point, over a span of about 2 decades, it's hard to, eventually Trout will enter that conversation. Bryce Harper, I'm sure too. But like, when you think of 2002, remember, Miggy Cabrera was part of the 2003. I know Mike Zabo wasn't born yet. The 2003 World Series champion Florida Marlins team that defeated the Yankees in 6 games. But, and he was very young at the time. But it's just so unfortunate that Miggy didn't win as much as he probably should have in his career, because obviously he's been stuck. I don't want to say stuck in Detroit. Obviously, they went to a World Series against the San Francisco Giants, but they never fully reached their potential. And since then, Miggy has still never won a world championship since 2003. But getting back on track here, I don't think there's any ill will there. That he's trying to win a game, and of course, karma struck the Yankees, and Austin Meadows dunked what is probably on most days a catchable ball in between the shortstop and the center fielder that scored the 2 runs that won the game for the Tigers. So I don't think there's really much more for me to add to than that, because there was just nothing there to say, oh, Aaron Boone, why would you do that to Miggy? He's just trying to win a game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
Enough with the feelings. Too much of feelings and emotions in the sports. I mean, we're trying to win games, for Christ's sake. Who cares about the feelings? Trying to win games. At the bottom line, at the end of the day, it's a bottom line business, and just got to get your wins and whatnot.
Amen to that. I do agree. I do agree completely. And that's, I mean, again, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was 2 for 3, 3 for 3 yesterday, something along those lines.
Miguel Cabrera yesterday was 0 for 4.
It was 0 for 4. Oh, okay. So then you could have.
Well, 0 for 3 with the walk.
Yeah, 0 for 3 with the walk. Yeah, 4.
And he's not even going to get his 3,000th hit today because the Tigers and Rockies were postponed.
Yeah, well,
so he's got to wait even another day.
We'll see what happens tomorrow, Saturday. Now, just to keep on moving forward here, fellas. Obviously, we wanted to get back to what we wanted to discuss with that Aaron Boone and Steve Cohen possibility, which is not going to happen. That was completely debunked by Cohen himself. But then something else too. We wanted to talk about former Mets legend Marcus Stroman, who is hails from the Long Island area, of course, and he didn't. He wanted out. He's all over the place. Mets fans eventually had grown to dislike him. And let's just say karma is beginning to bite him in the rear end, because he's now 0 for 2 with a high, if I'm not mistaken, 6 ERA. And he signed a massive deal out in Chicago to be their new number 1. Ian, your thoughts as a Mets fan?
Well, probably number 2 behind Kyle Hendricks, but
That's true.
But I'm thrilled. Are you kidding? I mean, the culture. I mean, that's the one thing that Steve Cohen and new general manager Billy Epler did this offseason. They really tried to unload a lot of the dirty laundry, and a lot of that was tied to probably Marcus Stroman, one, and Noah Syndergaard, the other. And now both are pitching for new franchises, especially after Syndergaard was like, I want to stay. And the first thing he did was he bolted for the City of Angels and now plays for the Angels. And then there was all that talk that they were trying to trade McNeil because of all the issues last year between him and Lindor. And McNeil's hitting well, and supposedly that's been squashed. But getting back on point with Stroman, this is great. I love it. I did like the move initially when they traded for him at the deadline. Thought it was good to get a pitcher in with the Mets that could induce ground balls in a pitcher's ballpark. But really, his attitude is just he's just a very listen. All the more power to him with his height doesn't measure heart and everything he runs with that apparel line. But he's really proven just to be a cancer anywhere he's been, whether that be Toronto, the Mets, and if he doesn't start winning in Chicago, it's probably going to filter over there too. So I'm glad to see that things are going well for the Mets and not so well for Marcus Stroman in Chicago.
Yeah, it's an absolute disastrous thing to see, even though, 2017 Gold Glove winner, he was an all-star in 2019, all good stuff, yada, yada, yada with Toronto. I mean, Mike, is there really more to add in terms of being a cancer and really just destroying locker rooms and clubhouses or dugouts left and right?
Well, it was for this very reason, to put it in a Yankees perspective, it was for this very reason that Brian Cashman said, absolutely not, I'm not going anywhere near him during that trade deadline where the Mets ultimately got him. Everybody thought it was going to be the Yankees. He loved the Yankees, all that sort of stuff. And Brian Cashman was like, what are you talking about? It was never going near him. And he basically, just jumped over Stroman, saying he doesn't really – it was privately saying that he doesn't really think the guy would be a guy you'd want in there to be like your game 2 starter in a playoff series. So, which was where the Yankees were at that point in 2019 with how good they were. And so that just gives you perspective there that the attitude problem is kind of there's kind of a perception around the league as well. So I think that was the biggest thing really holding the Mets back in the last couple of years was culture. Obviously injuries played a factor too, and the DeGrom being injured here and there and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of it was culture. And, whether it was things going on with Mickey Callaway and there was disgruntlement there and then he was fired and all that sort of stuff. And then last year, the like Ian said, the McNeil and Lindor fiasco and whatever was going on there. We don't even know the full extent, whatever it was. But it just seemed like they definitely needed a culture revamp to really get them where they wanted to go. And the first stop to do that was Marcus Stroman. So like Ian said, that's something that they need to do. And, I guess karma is, what.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's really sad to see what's happened to this once promising player up in Toronto, and when he was not supposed to be a number one for this, for the Toronto Blue Jays at the time. At the time, he was this promising prospect, number 2, number 3. He was. He made a spot start at one point, which was, I believe, his debut when Brandon Morrow went down. I remember that. That was many, many years ago. And, all of a sudden now he took the bull by the horn and just could not get out of his own way. And I don't want to call it this Long Island attitude, but he just has this attitude and this aura with him that breathes just, it's like a black, it's like a black breath that he breathes, and it's simply not good. And now again, just by looking at some of his numbers, it's not ideal. 3 years, $71 million to play for the Cubs. And again, just by looking, I'm trying to just find the exact stat here with it. He's 0-2 with an 8.78 earned run average, having struck out 14 and 13 and a third innings of work. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad for a major league ball player. That's really bad when you signed a 3-year, $71 million deal. That there should be no excuse for that. And I understand that the Cubs are bad, but they're not that bad where you have not only no run support, you're simply not pitching up to par, and it's showing with what Stroman has brought to the table here this year, and it's not much.
I will say it's only the first. It's not. We're not even 1 month into the season, though. So I will say that things can change, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's. Let's just say that he's heading down a dark path that the Cubs were going down anyway, but we expected to maybe have a lower ERA. Did we think that it would be this high now or anytime this season? I personally didn't. And I understand that the Cubs lost a ton of players. Granted, it shouldn't be. Ian, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, and I was just going to add to what you and Zaba were saying. It's a guy who also just really could not wait to get out of New York. I mean, remember, I don't have the quote in front of me, but just his sentiments as he was leaving New York, and I didn't want to work with this administration, and it's a terrible place to be, and could not wait to get to Chicago. And like Mike said, granted, we're only a couple of starts into the year for him, but it's not a good start. So hopefully for Stroman's case, he could turn around, because those numbers you definitely don't want to see the first couple of outings of the year.
Guys, let's keep on moving forward here and going back to Queens, of course, what we were discussing early on about that possible Aaron Judge Mets, signing, quote unquote signing, but again, was immediately debunked by Cohen, by the entire, by the folks that cover the Mets. Ian, you wanted to add a couple of things before we moved on about that, because that would be something else if Aaron Judge went to Queens.
Yeah, I thought what was most interesting, and from what I heard about it and read about it, was that Steve Cohen was quoted as saying, "I would never do that to the Yankees." Steal a franchise player of Aaron Judge's caliber. And I don't know how much I buy that. I really don't, because in the end, they play in the same city as you, and you're both vying for a world championship. I mean, it's kind of crazy to be putting the Mets in the same breath as the Yankees when it comes to saying those words, because as a Met fan of 30 plus years, I've probably never said that in a serious tone. But I think what is most interesting about it is that, and I heard Evan Roberts say this on The Fan, that the reason they're probably not going to go after Judge is because they're waiting 2 or 3 years to put in a massive offer for Juan Soto, which I think seems a great way to try to steal. I mean, remember Juan Soto's brother was signed by the Mets, and then left the Mets when he signed and went to Washington. So you wonder if this is a whole type of eventual package deal. I mean, to fleece him from your division rival and just put a star young, who at the time will be younger than Judge is now, star outfielder for the future in right field for the New York Mets. So I think that's probably more the reason than paying Judge somewhere up around 8-9 years to take him until he's 40.
And could it be an encore situation for the Washington Nationals to not only lose Bryce Harper, which we knew was going to happen anyway at the time, because the Lerners were not paying Harper that much money that he wanted, but could they open the wallet for Soto? We don't know, because the Lerners are looking to sell the Nationals, so we have no idea what's going to happen down there, and that would be one heck of a story if the Nationals lose both Harper and Soto in a span of about 5 to 6 years, maybe even more. Yet they did come away with a World Series championship in 2019, but for them to lose a second franchise player, that would probably raise the alarms down in the nation's capital. But for the Mets, though, that would be pretty big to make that offer. And if there is anybody who can make a substantial offer that, can easily play around with the numbers, it's Steve Cohen, because he could say, here you go, here's a blank check, write down whatever number you want, and I will sign it. He can do that.
And imagine, Joey, by the time Soto would be a free agent, Lindor would still be right in the thick of his prime. He'd be age 29, age 30. So he'd probably be entering the last 4 to 5 years of his prime years. And then factor that in with Soto, you've got 2 generational players in a lineup back to back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have no idea also what the pitching would look like either for the Mets. And again, with a wallet like Steve Cohen, it goes very deep. So a lot of good things on the horizon for the Mets, as Yankees fans don't want to hear it, because things are looking quite bleak for the Yankees, despite them still spending money and whatever. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here, and let's go into the National Football League once again. We were discussing it early on. Just north of me where I am on the Turnpike, there's some issues over in Giants World. And the problem that's going on in Giants World is that Kadarius Toney does not want to report to voluntary practice. Well, that's okay, because it's voluntary. That's what Kenny Golladay says. But hold the phone. There is some possibilities that the Giants may be looking to trade Kadarius Toney. What happens here, Ian Schraier?
I'm not surprised in the least. Let's also remember that this is a draft pick that's tied to the end of Dave Gettleman. It was his last draft as general manager of the New York Giants. And Kadarius Toney was brought in under his administration and his coaches. Now we're working under new administration with Joe Schoen as the GM and Brian Daboll as the New York Giants head coach. And if you are a second-year player, you are by no means, just because you were drafted in the first round, a franchise player, means that you should be missing voluntary camp to try to get yourself abreast on what is going on with the playbook. I think even Kenny Golladay is at voluntary minicamp. And that should just give you all the more reason for a guy like Golladay, who's being paid a lot of money to produce at a very expensive position for the New York Football Giants, to come in and try to get himself familiarized with the playbook, with the new coaches, the new administration, and everybody that he will be reporting to come training camp in July. Kadarius Toney, who is spent half the year injured, the other half of the year definitely wowing people with some plays that he made because of his elusive speed, but by no means does he have any with regards to carte blanche of acting like he's this superstar player for the Giants. I would not be surprised to see him get traded. I don't know what anyone's going to trade, what they're going to trade him for at this point. I think his value is, even as just 1 year removed from the league, is awfully low. Like I said, he was hurt half the year, and the other half of the year, the Giants really couldn't put the ball in the end zone all that much, so he didn't score all that much. I'd say the only team that would potentially look into him if Urban Meyer was still there was the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they were the only team that was seriously pursuing Kadarius Toney besides the New York Giants in the draft last year. So I know Pat Leonard reported that the Giants are actively looking to trade Kadarius Toney. They're also actively hoping to trade James Bradbury by the draft to move money around with the cap. But I don't see any takers at this point. I mean, maybe Joe Shane come draft night finds a way to unload him for like a 4th or a 5th round draft pick at most, which would help the Giants, granted. But this doesn't surprise me one bit. This is just a disgruntled wide receiver. For whatever reason, he's disgruntled, that isn't happy now with the new administration of the Giants.
Oh, boo-hoo. Mike, let me ask you this question now. And the thing to me is that what is the ceiling for Kadarius Toney? Is there a ceiling, or is it, here you go, here, I'll take a Subway sandwich for you?
I mean, in terms of his talent, I mean, he's got great potential. Like Ian said, he had a couple of plays last year that really displayed that, oh, this guy could really have a great future. And I think the biggest example was when he torched Trayvon Diggs down in Dallas for 189 yards. In that unfortunate loss down in Dallas, which came in a season of many losses once again for the Giants. But the talent is there, the potential is there, but there's just the question now of work ethic. I don't know why. Like, I get it's voluntary minicamp, but you're a guy you're only one season removed of coming into the NFL. You're injured for most of the time. Now you have new coaching. I mean, why wouldn't you be there for every single practice that you could get in? It just doesn't make sense. But whatever gripe he has, I think if you're the Giants, you try and repair it because, like Ian said, his value is at a low. You'd really get nothing out of him, a 4th or 5th round pick. I mean, like you said, you're really just trading a Subway sandwich for him. But, I mean, so I think they'd have to repair it a bit and then go from there. But if it reaches a point, I guess you just cut bait. If he doesn't show up anytime soon, I guess, for the rest of minicamp. But it's just such a silly situation to have to get into. That's really my thought of it all.
Let me ask you this, and this is something else too that you can really dive into about Kadarius Toney is that, yes, even though that Dave Gettleman drafted him 1st round pick, 20th overall a season ago, with Joe Judge as the head coach, despite him not showing up this year, if he did show up, would he still be considered 1st round talent per se with these numbers? 39 receptions, 420 yards. His longest reception was 38 yards. He averages 11 yards per catch. He started in 4 games, played in 10. Is this 1st round talent? Is this a 1st round talent? Or is this somebody that needs just a fresh start with a brand new coaching staff? And would this work with the new staff?
I think it's I see where you're going, Joey. I think it's hard to say that a guy who's only 1 year in and is kind of in the midst of a change with regards to leadership for the New York Giants, to say that he is a 1st round a great 1st round pick or a bust, or should get a change of scenery. I mean, the kid is 21 years old at this point. He still has a lot to prove, and I think if anything that what Dable and Shane have proved in their time in Buffalo is that they know how to run an offense with regards to having Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley and Devin Singletary, and making the most out of the players that they had in Buffalo. There's no reason to think that they wouldn't be able to do the same with Kadarius Toney. So I don't think I think he still has a lot. He still has another year or two if he's staying in New York to prove that it was worth the pick that the Giants, where the Giants drafted him. Because if not, it's just another missed pick for the Giants and added to the laundry list of missed 1st, 2nd, 3rd round draft picks that this team has had in the last 10 or so years. I don't think it's anything more than that, Joey. I think if you want to be a consummate pro and prove to that you're going to come to work every day to make this team better, and not show up to voluntary camp when you know that there's going to be new changes afoot with this franchise, that I would, if I was the GM or the head coach of that team, I really wouldn't want to welcome with open arms.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of the way that I was thinking is that, this is a terrible look to the brand new coaching staff and Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen and these guys that, are brand new, because you're coming in and you're saying to yourself, wow, this is what the previous administration wanted. This is what they missed in their draft prep. This is what they missed. And, they couldn't figure this out, that this guy was a head case to begin with. No, we don't want him. We'll trade you for that bag of baked Lays that are over on the sofa over there. It's a serious shame, and this is not like a Kevin White situation where, he's injured. He's oft injured. Kevin White was always hurt with Chicago, and he was a first-round bust. I can't call this guy a bust yet. We just have to unleash him or, unload him, not only to a certain, to a specific team that would be able to handle someone like this. But then again, there is a team that Odell Beckham kind of, really worked well with, and that was LA. And I'm not saying that the Rams are going to be, they're not going to come calling the Giants and say, hey, we'll take on Tony. But, Cleveland had a problem with OBJ. And now, and again, it's very difficult and early to say that Kadarius Toney is an Odell Beckham.
I don't think he's going anywhere, Joey. I really don't. I like I said, the only team that was interested in him on draft night to move up for him were the Jacksonville Jaguars. Urban Meyer's not there anymore.
Would they release him?
He might. I would, if I had to bet on it.
I would say if there was any, if it was any of those options, it would be that one. Yeah.
Well, an awfully crazy decision, especially with the draft days away, which is a big deal. There is a ton of movement within the NFL, and something too that we've continuously seen all over social media is that there is not a single off season, a single day in an off season for the NFL because of what we have gotten to see this off season. I'll be honest with you guys. I think that this is one of the best off seasons that we have seen in the National Football League in a very long time, because there are stretches where there's not a lot of there's not a lot of room to talk about things. There's not a lot of chatter, period, because everyone's off for the spring and for the summer. Media wise, of course, there's voluntary practice and whatnot, and there's not a lot of big things going on. Pre-draft wise, yeah, there's some trades and whatnot, but again, also another thing too, obviously that happened that was notable. Now, not really, we're not going to discuss it much, but again, the Bucs made some movement with Tom Brady's contract and freed up $9 million. Where's our good friend Evan Winter, who's definitely all over that, because the Bucs have a lot of needs on that offensive line too, as well as wide receiver and really all around the roster to ensure them to get back to the playoffs. Guys, let's keep on moving forward though. National Hockey League news, because there's the NHL is, we're about a couple of weeks shy of the first round of the playoffs. And obviously for those that do not know, this is late for the National Hockey League to end. And the reason why was because the Winter Olympics was supposed to be in Beijing, and the NHL was supposed to participate. And unfortunately, things did not go well between the NHL and the IOC. And that's why, COVID obviously happened, and there were some makeup games that went in there, and there were a lot of makeup games that had to go into that 2-week break. So it actually worked out well for all 32 teams. So that's why we're going into the latter portion of the season, about 6 to 7 games left per team. And that's where we're going to dive a little bit into the Eastern Conference. And we're going to look, of course, at the New York Rangers, because they are the team that is closest to us, that is doing the best. The New York Rangers come into this, or rather tonight, with, I believe, 102 points. You look at that, or 104, or something along those lines. 108 points, excuse me. God help me if I miss 1 or 2 points, because that'll make a massive difference. Listen, 118 points for the Florida Panthers. The Hurricanes and the Rangers are tied at 108 points. 78 games played. They've got 4 games left. That's a big deal, of course. The chase for the Metropolitan Division. Who wants it the most? It's a battle between the Canes and the Rangers, guys. We got a chance to see yesterday the Rangers took down the Islanders by a score of 6-3 at Belmont Park. The Rangers have won 4 straight. The Panthers have won 12 straight. Guys, again, I'm outnumbered here. And now that Rob DeLuca is no longer with us, I'm officially outnumbered, and this sucks. But again, it's tough because the Rangers right now, if the season ended today, the Rangers would be locked in as the number 2 seed in the Metro. Carolina owns the tiebreaker right now, but they've got some problems heading into the playoffs with their goaltender Freddie Anderson, who is one of the leaders for the Vezina. He is out. I don't want to call it long-term or short-term, but he's right in the middle. And that's a big deal heading into the first round of the playoffs because he was a big part in what the Hurricanes were able to do this year. Ian Schrei, I want to start with you. You're the best, I would call it the best first-round opponent for this Rangers team. Who would it be?
I'd have to say one of either the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Washington Capitals, probably. I know it's hard to maybe not pick one of the two. The Rangers have done incredibly well against both teams this year. I believe they're 3-1 this year. They went 3-1 against the Pens. They still have one more game left with the Caps, but I believe they're 2-1 against Washington this year. Obviously, goaltending's been a big part of that, but the output, especially the last few weeks, when the Rangers have played most of their games against the Penguins, has really showed out, especially post-deadline with Kopp and Vetrano, and the fact that they've gotten a lot better 5v5. More of their games against the Caps have just been on the backs of Chris Kreider and Igor Shesterkin. But I think either or would be great for the Rangers. I'd really like to steer clear of the Atlantic Division at all costs. It's just so competitive. Obviously, they won't see Florida, but I mean that there's still a lot of jostling and with regards to or Toronto, but there's still a lot of moving around with regards to who will be the third team in the Atlantic and who will shift down to the wild card, that being Boston or Tampa. Now the Rangers play Boston tomorrow in Boston at TD Garden on national TV, I believe at 3:00 tomorrow. So we'll get a little bit more of an idea of maybe a preview if the Rangers were to draw Boston, if they win the division. But yeah, I would say Pittsburgh and Washington. They've really played well against both those teams this year. It's hard to go against Shesterkin based on his resume against either of those teams in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's
and just really how well the offense has been playing as well.
Mike Szabo, continue on with his point.
Yeah, I would agree about the playoff matchup. I think the only concern is the Eastern Conference has been so strong this year, so any matchup's going to be difficult. But certainly the Penguins and Capitals have plenty of veterans, whether it's Yevgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby, or then on the Capitals, Alexander Ovechkin, who they've just been there and done that so many times. They know how to win. That's the only thing that will concern you a bit. Playoffs come, the intensity turns up, but if you look across the entire field, yeah, those two teams are probably the best matchup for the Rangers in the first round. Like Ian said, the offense has been playing a lot better 5-on-5. We don't have to rely on the power play as much to see a goal. The defense has also been playing a bit better as well in terms of allowing high danger opportunities on Igor Shesterkin or Georgiev when he's in there. So the control, the defense's control has been a little bit better on allowing opportunities, which is a good sign, especially coming toward the playoffs where those high danger opportunities in the playoffs, a higher intensity, could turn into goals. So that's a big important part of it. So this is kind of the part where you kind of hate things as a fan, where you always want to see your team win. But if they keep on winning, they may draw a harder matchup. So they're really in a weird place right now. And just watching them, I think tomorrow's game's really interesting. But then Tuesday night at the Garden that's going to be a massive heavy hitter of a game. Them against Carolina basically with 2 more games after that could potentially decide the division, depending on how the teams do in the next couple of games before Tuesday night. But yeah, all signs are pointing up. It's just you'd rather avoid the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something that you look at and you say to yourself, well, we could go into this playoffs and not have to go against a Boston team that is so gritty, first off, for starters. And also you won't have to go up against the team, if I'm not mistaken. We have not seen Evgeny Malkin in a long time.
He was suspended for the cross check, remember?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So and the way, and I don't want to say a long time, but obviously, yes, he was suspended. I think it was 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
4 games. Yeah. So it seems like a lot. So he'll be back, obviously, but I don't know. Do I want to go against the grit? Do I want to go against the experience? And again, when you have a player or players like Crosby, Malkin, Jeff Carter, again, I don't know if I really want to go up against a team like Pittsburgh, despite their record or the amount of points that they have, 99 right now. If I'm the Rangers, I want to see Boston all day. If I'm the Rangers, I don't want to see Pittsburgh, because despite what they have been able to do throughout all the years that they've been able to push teams to the brink and continuously show their experience and showcase it on a national stage night in and night out. A couple of years ago, we remember when the Islanders played the Penguins in a playoff series, and we saw what happened with Jeff Carter, right? Or I think we remember that. I believe me and Ian were discussing that. When Jeff Carter just absolutely annihilated the New York Islanders, but the Islanders eventually came out on top. But, the difference though is that, again, this team is fully healthy. They've got a lot of depth now. This is a team that was very top 6 heavy. The Penguins were, but the Rangers now, all of a sudden, they are now rolling all 4 lines. They're rolling all 4 lines. And that is something very dangerous for this team to go up against any opponent. And I think that the best opponent for them would be the Bruins as of right now. But again, they are a team that is very experienced. I don't expect anything less from them. I think that the Rangers will still win 1 round, but whoever it may be coming out of the Atlantic Division, I think that's where their road stops. And obviously that's not the question that it is, but of course I had to just throw that in anyway. The Carolina Hurricanes, fellas, this is something else though that we need to bring up here, because this is a big deal throughout the entire NHL. Freddie Anderson, they're going to be turning to Rangers legend Andy Raanta. And they now are going to have to rely on him for the division crown. This is a big deal. We're going to see Antti Raanta against the Rangers, coming this, what was it, this Thursday? Tuesday. That's a big deal. Mike Zabo, I want to start with you. How big of a loss is Freddie Anderson for this Hurricanes team?
I mean, it's pretty huge, especially this close to playoff time. When you get into those shorter playoff series, having a goalie like Anderson, who's a Veneza type goalie, it makes you that much harder to beat in the playoffs 4 times in a series. But I think Raanta has been capable this year. I think his record is like 23-15 and something. So he's done well filling in as a backup for Carolina. It's just, can he do that in the playoffs? So I think there is a concern, but if you're Carolina, I think they got a pretty talented enough team that I don't think Raanta will, that they got a good enough defense that I don't think Ranta will be seriously a liability. I don't think he'd be a reason that they fall out of the division lead or they lose a playoff series and whatnot. They're going to have a really tough first round matchup if they hold on to the division lead, whether it could very well be the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. And that's not an easy road going through that in the first round, even as good as Carolina has been. So it is a concern. So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah.
I think we'll just want to clarify here what it would be right now if the Hurricanes will be playing the Caps. Right now Toronto and Tampa. That would be the 2-3 game. Carolina would be playing Washington. Boston is 3 points shy of Tampa, which could be, but then that would be. Or actually, it would be Carolina. It would be Carolina, Boston, Florida, Washington. That's what it is. And Toronto, Tampa. Yes, that's exactly what it would be. So there's definitely a lot of shuffling there. Could that happen though? I mean, listen, if I think that would be probably the worst case scenario for Carolina. That would be the worst.
If only we could go to the simpler days of all the seedings and everything in the Eastern Conference. Remember those sweet, great days before I was born.
That I was gonna say, Mike, you were a mustard seed. That's what you were. You were one of those mustard seeds that are, the size of this little green camera that's on here, or this green dot that's on here saying that the camera is on. That was you back in 2013. But yeah, no, many years ago it was 1-8, 2-7, the good stuff, the good times back in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, and that was when it was I love those way better than what it is now. But it's all good, and I want to move over, guys, to the West Coast. And I think when you look and say to yourself about the Western Conference in the NHL, you say to yourself that, well, the Vegas Golden Knights are finally getting what they deserve, which is 78 games played, 89 points. They are 2 points shy out of a wild card spot with Dallas. They are also 5 points shy with 4 games to go, 1 game in hand with LA. It's not good. Let's just say it's not good whatsoever. $100 million payroll pretty much going up in flames.
Yeah,
it's not looking too hot for Vegas, guys. Ian, I want to start with you here. Mm-hmm. It's such a shame to see with what Vegas has done with Nate Schmidt, what they've done with many other players, what they did with Evgeny Dadonov. They now have a lot of cap issues heading into next year, and the entire Vegas Golden Knights franchise is really just suffering from it. And I can't say that I feel bad, because I really don't.
You just wonder at this point.
You just hate the cap manipulation, don't you? You're the numbers guy. You just hate all that cap stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do for sure. But listen, the reason why I say it that way is because I have a problem. I have a big problem with the way they treat some of their players, right? You say to Nate Schmidt, yeah, we're going to sign you long term. You're going to be a big part of this. And then, oops, we got somebody else. We got a brand new toy coming in, and Alex Pietrangelo. Oops, there's no room for you. Bye. Right? Mm-hmm. And we also remember how they did Marc-Andre Fleury, because, oops, they signed Robin Lehner to a big deal worth $5 million. I think it was like 5 times 5. And oops, we got no more room for you. Let's ship you off.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And now you say to yourself too, oh, we need a center. Jack Eichel, let's get him. Oh, he's making $10 million a year with no retained salary up in Buffalo. So now they've got everything on them. And now they're going to have no choice but to trade Dadonov. And guess what? They know every other team in the NHL, all 31 teams know that they are going to squeeze every little bit out of Vegas. And what does that mean? That means that they are going to be very desperate to get under the cap, because the cap only raised $1 million this upcoming year. And they can ask for a 7th round pick, and they might have no choice but to take it. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. People are going to play fair, But you can take full advantage of Vegas, and they might just be desperate enough to say, yeah, we kind of have no choice but to say, here, take him for nothing. We have to. It's a sad state of affairs, fellas. It really is, to see what's happened out in Vegas. And you know what? Credit to the guys out in Los Angeles. Where's our good friend DB when you need him? Because I'd love to hear what he has to say about LA. He called LA making the playoffs. He really did.
Yeah.
You know, I had Vegas written all over it. And then when Jack Eichel that trade was made, and then Mark Stone went on long-term injured reserve. Oh yeah. We knew it was going to be Tampa Bay Lightning just out in the desert. We knew it. But now Vegas Roosters have finally come home, and that's it. It's a sad state of affairs that they are going to miss the playoffs. And if they do miss the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of movement. A lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Fellas,
go ahead,
anybody
Ian.
want
I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I mean, I think Joey and yourself really hit the nail on the head with regards to what's going on in Vegas, and I think there's not much more that can be said than the fact that Jack Eichel, since he's returned from injury, has underperformed greatly for Vegas. That's been a big piece of it. A lot of their stars are aging. I believe Pacioretty's 33. Even some of their younger stars like Mark Stone, William Karlsson are both pushing 30. Robin Leonard's 30 and Alex Petrangelo's 32. There's a lot of question marks coming into the offseason for Vegas, and they do have a shot still to make the playoffs. As Joey said, they're only 2 points back at Dallas. They've got 4 games left for the final wild card spot. One of those games happens to be against Dallas in Dallas. They do have favorable matchups still with San Jose and Chicago, but I believe they finished the season, if I'm not mistaken, I believe all 4 of their last games are on the road. I could be wrong as I'm just looking this up here. No, excuse me. They have the game with San Jose on Sunday will be in Vegas, but then they've got 3 straight to end the season on the road. So at Dallas, at Chicago, and at St. Louis. So 2 teams still, like with respect to Dallas and Chicago, still fighting and jostling for playoff positions. So, like Joey said, I think there's going to be a lot of movement going on in the desert should the Golden Knights not make the playoffs, and they're not playing like a playoff team right now. So we'll see come next week where Vegas stands.
Really crazy stuff, fellas, to see what's going on out there, and then to see what the deal is out in the Western Conference. Anyway, we've got. We got a chance to obviously see what's going on in the conference. The Colorado Avalanche, they clinched the best record in the Western Conference, 55-16-6, 116 points. Minnesota and St. Louis. That is a very enticing playoff first round series that has already been called. That will be the first round matchup in the Central Division. Minnesota and St. Louis. Now, we're still seeing on who's going to be the 2 and the 3 seed, but those 2 teams will go head-to-head. Now, I know, as you guys said, I'm kind of the cab guru a little bit, but keep in mind, New York Islanders legend Zach Parise and now Dallas Stars legend Ryan Suter are both being paid from the Minnesota Wild starting, I think it was next year or this year. I think
it was next year. You said, Joe.
The buyout, the buyout for both of them are sky high. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is going to be the largest duo in terms of a buyout in not only franchise history, but also in the NHL's history as well. It's going to be something along the lines, I think, of a combined $16 million in terms of a buyout that's going to be on the dead cap starting next year. And for Minnesota, this is really their last time to shine because they are going to have a lot of movement that they're going to have no choice but to make because of that dead cap that they are going to be stuck with for the next 2 to 3 years. And that $16 million dead cap is going to linger for about 2 to 3 years. That's something else too. So next time, Minnesota, think about signing, Zach Parise, an aging superstar, to a massive deal, and also to signing Ryan Suter to a matching contract. Dunces, not too bright. Yeah, and it never worked out at all. So that's a shame. Let's keep moving forward, fellas. And I do believe that has come to our show has come to a close. It's crazy stuff how an hour and 54 minutes have gone by like that. Jake Zimmer, Kyle Madsen were on the show early on. We cannot thank them enough, of course. And guys, let's get to our final thoughts, of course. Sports update, as Jake Zimmer did kind of say earlier. Donald Copeland, assistant coach under Kevin Willard over at Seton Hall, becomes the next head coach over at Wagner for the Wagner Seahawks out in Staten Island, which is a cool thing. That was unofficially announced, of course, but all signs point to that. Also, per some sources of mine as well, say yes, that is the case. Guys, let's get to our kudos. Ian, start with you first on our kudos.
Sure. Initially, I wanted to give my kudos to Andrew Kopp, and congrats again to Andrew Kopp on his first career hat trick as a Rangers, second career hat trick.
Yeah. What else you got?
No, my kudos actually go out to New York Rangers backup goaltender Alexander Georgiev. I've been riding him all season, and just did not like his attitude early on in the year. Really felt like, really thought he was going to get traded because he wasn't liking the amount of, or the lack thereof, of time and goal that he was receiving with respect to the season that Igor Shesterkin's been having. But the two have really turned into a formidable pair. They until last night, they had a shutout streak of up to 200 minutes between, and as a result, both of them have started 2 games, and they're on a 4-game winning streak as they're a team who was maybe going to back into a wild card spot is contending for a Metro Division title, and Alexander Georgiev's a big part of that. So my kudos go to Rangers backup goalie Alexander Georgiev.
Mike Szabo, I'm hoping maybe you can give kudos to a Subway sandwich as opposed to somebody else on the New York Rangers, please. Who else? What's your kudos?
My kudos is not on the New York Rangers for now.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
My kudos goes to our alma mater, Joey, and the news last week of Andre Curbelo coming in. Certainly a ton to still work out for St. John's this offseason, but you heard the news. The talent potential there, bringing him in, just a fantastic get in the transfer portal and start to the offseason for Mike Anderson and his coaching staff. Still have a lot to work out in terms of shooting issues, but a really good start to the offseason there.
Get ready for Mike Szabo's quad 1 win updates coming to you in the 2022-23.
I'm not saying it's going to work out, but right now it's a good start. They still need a lot more.
As a quad 1 win before they've even played a game yet.
Yeah.
Well, this is something else too, is that Andy Katz also put out on NCAA.com in terms of top teams to start off the off season, and St. John's and Providence are the top 2 teams that he's got up there, in addition to a couple others that have made waves in this year's off season. So everyone hold your horses. St. John's will only get 2 more wins and still fail in the Big East tournament. Guys, no, I have no hope. Curbelo or none. I'm sorry. This no. Guys, my kudos goes to former I can't believe I'm saying this, former Duke player Paolo Banchero. He was just named he just declared for the NBA draft with an agent. He's done down at Duke. So many different players are done. Mark Williams is done. Plenty of players are done down in Duke. And just like what Jake was saying also is that, your number only gets retired if you spend all 4 years there. And that's not the case here with a lot of these players now today. So my kudos goes to Banchero, just because he had such a fantastic March Madness season. And I would not be surprised if he goes in the top 3. Yeah. Book it. There is some chatter that Paolo Banchero could potentially be the number 1 overall pick. I don't see that happening, but I do see him in the top 3. Absolutely. He is that dynamic, and I can see him playing a big part on an NBA team. Well, guys, our show has come to a close. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot thank you all enough for being a part of this Friday night special, 7:30 start. 2 hours have come and gone like that. Please be sure to subscribe to us on the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey. And of course, please do us all a favor and subscribe to us on YouTube by searching The Eastern Observer. Why? Because you get to see all of our beautiful faces every single week. Ladies and gentlemen, also, we did announce last week that our summer series of the Primetime Rundown will begin on Monday, June 6th, going all the way till the week before Labor Day, August 29th, and all of those shows can be seen starting at 7 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. Also, ladies and gentlemen, too, please be sure to subscribe to our friends at the Essential Wrestling Podcast. Episode number 100 will come your way later in May. Well, for Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here at the Eastern Observer, we wish you well on this Friday evening. And for all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, we'll see you next time.